Alright, so I'm going to be making a part two kind of to the last video that I did a while ago. And more of an update on my system. I've had a lot of people ask me questions, and I'm glad people are taking an interest. I didn't do the best at explaining in the last video the more details in the individual wiring, which what I'll do in this video. But originally I started with 300 RMS. That worked. I went up to 500. That worked. And now I'm up to 800 RMS. And I got this one right here. I'm going to quickly, give you guys a test. So this is the bumper vibrating, but supported. If you're on the newer models, with the, I'm not too exactly sure whether it's only the new Model 3 and Model Y, or it's the one with the Ryzen chips. But if you go into service mode, you have the speakers tab. This allows you to play frequencies, select individual speakers to play, gives you, ways to test, and then your power distribution right here is where you see the power coming. You can see right there. That kind of gives you an example on how I view the power usage and test it. So for my car, the amount of power you can use is going to depend on your model. The Model X and Model S have bigger DC to DC converters and they output more power. The Model 3, Model Y have smaller ones, and then you also have the different versions of batteries. Some use the lead acid batteries in the older models and are a lower voltage. My car is 15.6 volts and the battery is 15.5. Older models I think are 14.4. So take that into account when you are purchasing your amplifier. You need to use an amplifier that can work up to 16 volts, depending on your model. You're going to need an LOC, a line output converter, to take the speaker level signal from the car. So I have the premium amp in the back right there, and that's where I grab my signal. So if you don't have that, you're gonna have to use the front door woofer signal. Tap into it from the front. Again, which signals? You're gonna have to look up on Tesla's service manual and their electrical connector reference. That will show you what color and what wires they are that you need to tap in. I know it looks kind of like a mess right now because I'm not done. I'm gonna be changing all this out eventually. You're gonna need, you have two ways of doing it in a Tesla. You can put an extra battery or a relay and resistor. The relay and resistor is easier, but you're limited on power. If you install a second battery, you can go up way higher. 800 RMS for me is what I'm comfortable with using because of how much power the car outputs. Now, there's no exact source, but from what I have seen, my car, the Model 3 2024 Performance, can do up to 190 amps spike and 100 amps RMS. So when you have the HVAC, when it's like really hot outside or really cold and it's on max, I've seen the car draw up to 60 amps. So this is your output current, right? What the converter is putting out. When you have your HVAC, you're running your seat heaters, you have your speakers playing, this goes up. I've seen this go up to 60 while having, when it's really hot outside and it's on max. But when you're charging up your battery, say, because this happened to me once, when your battery dies, your 12 volt, and you have to jump it, it'll charge it at 80 amps. So the highest that I've seen the car use without my system connected is 80 amps. but it can do up to 190 depending on your model. But 800 RMS, 600 max, when the car is using 60 amps and you're also playing your subwoofer, that will spike up to 160 amps. So that's why I keep it at 800. I don't want to push it too close to the max of the car. It's also, you know, less risk of damaging the car. For the people that don't have the amp in the back, you're gonna have to grab the signal right there, behind there. There is a connector. For the cars that don't have the amp in the back, the amp is right here under. It's part of the main computer. So, but the place you're gonna grab your wire is right behind there, behind that carpet. There's a few connectors, and that's where you'll grab your signal. But keep in mind, unfortunately, if you have the rear wheel drive and don't have the premium amp in the back, because it's going to the front door woofers, those have a subsonic filter of 29 hertz. You're not going to get frequencies under 29, and there's no way to get it from the rear wheel drive, because the computer, you know, it's filtering out the signal before it sends it out. If you have the rear amp, then you can tap into the subwoofer wires, and those play all the way down to 5 hertz. So you'll be in luck right there. Here's 20 hertz playing. Tons of cone movement. I have people, you know, from what I've read online, everybody has different opinions. But one thing I do see in common with a lot of people is people who install way more powerful systems always end up reporting an error eventually. So I have been using this for almost a year now. No issues, except when I first started, I didn't use the relay. That caused my eventually for me to get an error after installing the relay. Have not had an error since. So I've covered the signal, where you can get it from the front, the back. As for power, so I do not recommend getting power from the front battery. Why? Because for Teslas, the battery primarily exists as a buffer. It rarely pulls power. The converter provides power all the time. It just sits as a small buffer. So when you're pulling power from the battery, that triggers the computer to start thinking that it's dying. I've seen, again, you know, this is from what I've seen. Discretion, use whatever you would like. People report after some time, the front battery starts reading that it needs to be changed. Because when you're pulling a lot more power, the car is like, well, it's not supposed to be drawing power this much. And the voltage keeps going down. So I think it's time to replace it. Again, this is from what I have seen. You know, everybody has their own different opinions. But I've not had any issues. I've never touched the front battery. And I do have the lithium battery because I do have the newer cars. And it's because the converter doesn't send power to the battery directly. It goes to VC front, and that separates it to VC right and VC left. And these have different voltage ranges as well, like on what they're sending on the rails. So their Tesla's system is just more complicated and more chances of errors. So when you try to pull from the battery, all that power is going to be running through VC front, then into the battery. So that's why I'm like, I'm not going to touch it. The amplifier in the rear uses the power current from VC right. The HVAC system, it goes through VC left. So depending on what you're using in the car, the power goes through the different rails. Yeah. The battery is not designed to have constant draw. I wouldn't say design, but the computer, right? Because it's just serving as a buffer zone for the converter. The converter does everything. That's why I prefer to tap into it. That's how I've done. I went to an audio shop, and they said that I shouldn't tap into the converter and I should do it straight from the battery. I've seen people online. I've seen plenty of people say that their battery died after a while. That's just my opinion. Do whatever you would like. I'm just simply describing what I have experienced. 1 year with the converter, no issues. So the car is always drawing about 25 amps of power, even if I turn everything off in the car. Right now I don't have the HVAC system. Turn the display. My guess is that's the power that is going to run the coolant system for the battery. That's my best guess, because this is always on. So that's always using about 25 amps of power. And then on top of anything else that you use in the car, your HVAC, your speakers, seat heaters, defroster. So now for the ground, there is a factory ground spot right behind here, at least for my car. Really, ground, just make sure it's metal to metal on the chassis. But there's a factory bolt with the wire harness that goes from all the wires in this area to the ground. That's where I attached it. You can see it in another video. And for the power, I use the DC to DC converter under. This is a custom box that I made just to fit here. Now let me kind of describe the actual wiring here. So LOC, amplifier, relay, resistor. Here's my ground. I have it to this distribution block right here, because I used to have 2 amps. But then I have a little timer for the 12-volt signal. The issue is when the car turns on after it's been sleeping, after you leave it for 15 minutes. After 15 minutes and Sentry mode is not on, it turns off. The DC to DC converter turns off, so there's no more power being supplied. When the car turns on, the car does a quick systems check. Make sure the voltage is proper on all the rails, right? So VC front, VC left, the DC converter. It does a quick power up system check. When you have any kind of power draw from the DC to DC converter, it's gonna trigger an error during that startup checklist. That's why you use a relay and a resistor. So the resistor only allows a small amount of energy to go through to charge the amplifier's capacitors. Then after, I have the timer. After I have it set to 10 seconds, it turns on the relay and allows power to flow to turn on and power the system. Some people, or everybody, detects an issue. If you try to wire directly, either right away or after some time, the car will trigger an error because the car is detecting abnormally draw from the amplifier, right, when it's turning on. That's why you use that. Everybody has their own ideas of how or why the car triggers an error. It boils down to because drawing 120 amps, and that's what this amplifier does at max from the DC to DC converter, it does fine. I've had no errors, nothing. So when using it normally, that's not an issue. That's just on startup. So I got all this on Amazon, the relay and the resistor. I do not recommend buying stuff on Amazon like amplifiers, LOCs, speakers, because Amazon doesn't check. I've ordered 3 amplifiers on Amazon. All 3 were used, so I don't recommend that. Now for the timer and how to turn it on. You can just, so that is my power wire from the DC to DC converter. You can just tap that to turn on your timer. But for me personally, I wanted a complete disconnect to turn off the system whenever I wanted from the front. Just in case, I'm very paranoid that my car is going to burn down, so I'm very cautious from when I'm driving. So I actually grab the timer's turn on signal from the USB-C converter right here. So I literally have a wire running from the USB-C right here down the side, up here to the back. And that's the 12-volt signal that I use to turn on. As far what I have seen, because I have seen lots of people use a little 12-volt switch, which they take the input from the brake pedal. When you press it, that turns on the relay. I didn't know how to grab the signal or where to do it, because I installed this almost right away on the new Performance when I got it last June, right away. So I couldn't find anything or what wires or any of that. So that's why I opted to use a little switch, and it's worked beautifully. After it receives signal, I have it set to 10 seconds. 10 seconds later, it turns on, which turns on the relay and turns everything on. So yeah, signal, the two speaker for the subwoofer signal goes right here. That's right there, the LOC. Then you can see I also have it powering my LOC, but you can power it from the main power wire. It doesn't really matter. So once the timer turns on the relay, which opens it on, allows power to flow. So for these wires, this is my main DC to DC converter power wire. As you can see, I have a wire connected to the resistor, and it bypasses the relay. So when it powers on, when this gets power, it powers on, goes through the resistor, goes back around and onto the other side, which is connected directly to the amplifier. That allows the amplifier to charge. Then you have, just your ground source for the relay, and then here's the 12-volt trigger switch. I say 12 volt, but it's 15 volt, but it still works. And that's all it does. All this does right here is just allows me to control when power can flow and when it cannot. After 10 seconds, this turns on, allows power to flow. I do have a fuse right here, 1 amp fuse, to prevent any the resistor overloading, but this is only used for a few seconds. So your ground, well, that's basic. Ground is anywhere in any metal on the car. Your RCA cables from the LOC, that's pretty basic. I don't use a bass knob on this amplifier. Why? I'll explain in a little bit. But that's pretty much it. So I have the timer. So your cable, wherever you're getting power, starts a 10-second timer. After the car's turning on, after 10 seconds, it allows power to flow, which turns the relay, turns everything on. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So the reason that I have no bass knob is so I can completely control from the OEM area, or equalizer. So this is completely how I control, and I could turn it off, because on the Tesla, if you turn this all the way down, it turns off the subwoofer. So I can turn off the subwoofer whenever I want, and I can fully adjust everything from right here, the bass level. So I prefer this way. I don't want to use a bass knob. It's just easier having it integrated. So I tried to explain things better, but yeah, I mean, this is how I did it. Again, I want to emphasize, because people always are like, oh, well, I heard this person did it this way, or this person did. I'm like, look, I did it this way. I've had it for almost a year. It has worked perfectly, so I have no reason to change it up. If you have any questions, anything, I don't mind helping. Just leave them in the comments. I'll answer them. And I mean, one last thing, the power. I wouldn't recommend more than 900 RMS unless you install a second battery, and that gets way more complicated too. Remember, if you do put a second battery, don't mix lead acid with lithium. And honestly, there's just a lot. You need to do research before you do that. But I will be installing a second battery eventually, because I do want to put more stuff in. And I mean, yeah, that's about it. If you have any concerns, just leave them in the comments. I'll answer them. Yeah.